Hi, Clutter Fairy fans. This is the Clutter Fairy Weekly for February 21st, 2023. I'm your co-host, Ed Gumnick, and I'm speaking with Gayle Goddard, certified professional organizer and owner of the Clutter Fairy in Houston, Texas.
Hi, everybody. The Clutter Fairy Weekly is the webcast and podcast that digs deep into the clutter that piles up between you and the life you want to be living. We explore the habits and behaviors that lead to clutter, and we suggest strategies to slow the accumulation, reduce the collection, and comfortably manage the stuff we decide to keep.
If you're new to our Zoom meeting, we want to let you know that you can share your comments and questions via the chat, and I'll try to make sure Gayle answers them before we move on to another topic. You can also use the raise hand feature if you'd like to make a comment or ask a question yourself via audio or video. We're also streaming the webcast live on Facebook, so you can share questions and comments there, and I'll relay them to Gayle. We're going to start by recapping last week's weekly tittle, which was called Trial Separation. The assignment was to explore letting go of an item with which you're having trouble breaking up. That's breaking up in air quotes. Let's hear from our participants in Zoom and Facebook. Who served papers on some of their stuff this week? Please let us know in the comments. Linda in Pennsylvania shared this great comment on our website. Older gal here, downsizing and having a hard time breaking up with my sewing machine. I've had a sewing machine in my home my entire life, used to sew a lot, but now just occasional mending and alterations. I think it represented a useful skill set, was tied up with my feeling that I was a competent person who had useful skills. Anyway, I'm focusing now on being a capable downsizer instead of a competent seamstress, and my local donation center seemed pleased to receive my sewing machine and accessories. I'll hand sew the odd mending task that comes up. Thanks for the nudge to get this done and to examine the thoughts and feelings that went along with it.
Linda, good job. And let me just say, I am sure that you're still a competent seamstress with or without the sewing machine. I know that the sewing machine was sort of an external reminder and evidence of your competence as a seamstress, but those skills are not gone just because you don't have the machine anymore. And if you someday have to go and sit at one of your friends, somebody's saying our library has a sewing machine. If you have to go and sit at somebody's sewing machine in order to do something, I'm sure you'll be just fine. And so congratulations for recognizing that it's not a big active part of your life right now, but you still have the skills and you'll still be able to use them if you need to. And in the meantime, you're letting that get some more active use from somebody else that really needs that sewing machine right now, instead of letting it collect dust in your space. And so good for you for working it out. And you can just sort of think of it as you're telling a new story about your life. And the new story is that you're going to be a successful downsizer who can share what you have that's extra, and not to share it with somebody that needs it now more than you do. And you're happy to pass the ability to be active along to someone else. And in the meantime, you don't have to be storing a sewing machine. And so everything has a season, right? And so for you, that sewing machine season has passed, and it can move on to someone else. So great job. Really, really proud of you for doing that. And it seems like, if you sent the sewing machine all the accessories, then somebody's going to be able to pick it up and immediately get on it and start doing their thing. So you probably made somebody's day super excited when they saw a sewing machine show up. So good job. Proud of you.
I also had the thought when I read this one that Linda has recognized that her stuff is not who she is.
Yes.
She does not cease to be a competent seamstress because she's gotten rid of the sewing machine. She'll still be a competent seamstress when she sits down to do the hand sewing for a mending task. That'll always be who she is, even if a time comes when she can't do it at all anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
M said, the coffee table, which kept attracting clutter, was banned. Now I keep thinking of new uses for it.
Yay, good for you. You banned it, you got it out of the house, and it's not collecting stuff anymore.
Deborah said, I got rid of a necklace, which had some emotional weight.
There's something about jewelry because we wear it on our person that gives it a little bit more emotional juice. So if you were able to let it go and bless it and kiss it and send it on to somebody, good job. Good for you.
Connie said, put 4 glass dishes aside. We'll probably give them away. So
they're in the parking space.
Yeah, they're in the trial separation.
Excellent.
It sounds like a lot of people have moved right on to letting it go, because Pat said, I've lost weight, so I put 5 larger pairs of nice slacks on Marketplace for $10 and sold them to someone else who is just starting her weight loss journey.
Oh, there you go. Good job. That was nice. And you were supporting somebody who's also doing the same thing that you are, which is great. So good for you.
Pat also said, I also decided I didn't need so many jelly jars since I haven't made jelly in many years. So I put 4 dozen on Marketplace for $4 each, and they are pending pickup now.
Yay, getting paid. Awesome. Yeah, you know, sometimes I have a friend who makes chocolate-filled croissants every Christmas, and she makes a massive amounts of them, like huge, and pulls out, 15 cookie sheets, and she makes a huge volume. But that volume is diminishing over time because it's so much work. And so what she did in her 40s, she's not so down with at 65, right? So she's trying to still have fun and still do what she likes to do and not do it at that same volume level. And so, hopefully some of the cookie sheets and some of the mixing bowls and some of that stuff can go out, because she's not going to make 400 croissants anymore. She's going to make something less than that.
Well, as the years go on, you also, you lose some people on your list by attrition, obviously, but then you also decide on the people who really maybe didn't quite deserve chocolate-filled croissant.
They don't get your bounty. Exactly.
Right. Or the people who were insufficiently grateful.
Let me just tell you, when I get chocolate-filled croissants, I am very grateful. They're quite spectacular.
Tammy said,
I want her to open a shop afterwards. She's never up for it.
Tammy said, I trashed 10 plastic Dickie barbecue cups.
Hey,
why I had them attached to the atmosphere and good food experiences. I think she's talking about, what they meant. Diane said, I put donated dishes in the cupboard while H was away, but he stated he hated them. LOL. So I put my old ones back. Guess they will be re-donated.
Yay. Good job. Yep. Sometimes when you live with somebody, you got to collectively make a decision. It's not always what you would do on your own. And you have to roll with what works for all, right? Okay. So either way, you're getting some dishes out, and that's the important part. So good job on you.
One more comment and then we'll move on. Okay. Leela said, I wanted to share this. I realized I was missing a couple of spoons and forks, blaming my husband who takes them to work, LOL. So I've been on a run of breaking up sets of things. We talked about that last week, not being afraid to break up a set. For example, I rarely use a butter knife, so why should I have 8? Broke up sets of dishes, books, etc. The butter knives are also a little bit discriminatory because they are almost universally right-handed.
Oh, really?
They're the ones that have a funny little blade that goes,
Yeah.
It's designed to work right-handed.
Yeah, because of the curve of the blade.
Yeah, a left-handed person has to cut butter this way.
There you go. I love the idea that you picked up the concept of breaking up the set, though, that it really doesn't have to stay a set. You can just keep the parts that you want, and you can let the rest go and let somebody else pick them up for their set. And so good job. And it sounds like you adapted it out to, more than one thing, which is great.
All right, I think we should move on to the first of our main topics.
Sir, yes, sir.
Crocuses and daffodils tell us that spring in the Northern Hemisphere is only weeks away. So now is a great time to start decluttering and organizing for lawn and garden season. But before we get to talking about that, we have a quick announcement. As we've been threatening to do for a while now, we've re-engineered our weekly surveys so that we can share the responses we get from you. Instead of using Google Forms, we're now hosting the surveys on our own website, which is where you'll find the results as well. To see the results of last week's survey, you can visit cfhou.com/results157. So that's going to be the formula for the short link to our survey results. There'll be last week's episode or this week's episode number. I'll include that link in the show notes and the YouTube description so that you don't have to remember that. We hope you'll enjoy the opportunity to read more of your fellow audience members' responses than the few that we have time to share during our live webcast. Also, we plan to reopen each survey after the episode in which we talk about it has passed, so that anybody who might have missed a particular survey will still have a chance to chime in, and their results will get shared if they click that button to share their results. So let's talk about gardening.
Well, I just want to say he did an immense amount of work. Webmaster Ed went above and beyond to make that happen. So you guys need to cheer for him. It's really very lovely. And you can see if you agree to that, yes, you can share your comments, then we can see a first name and then the comments that you made. And it's very easy to read. And it's fascinating to see how each of you come at the questions in a different way. And so you can share in our experience of reading the survey results and understanding, how you are the same and different from the other people that participate here. So we just need to cheer for Ed. Yay! Because he did an immense amount of work to make this happen. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And you guys are going to love it. It's going to be special to read and really interesting.
I've pasted that link, cfhou.com/results157 into the chat, but okay. I'm going to chastise everyone in advance and say, don't go reading the survey results while Gayle and I are talking. You have to wait and do that later.
Okay, there you go.
Okay.
All right. So speaking of survey results, we're going to talk a little bit about them in terms of gardening. So we asked the audience, which of the following growing things or green spaces are under your care? And the top answer was decorative indoor plants at 54%. So half of you, more than half of you, have indoor plants you're taking care of. And
a couple of people mentioned having 60, 80 other
a lot
spectacular
of plants,
numbers of houseplants.
Yeah, see, I can't have that many because if I did, they would all die.
Right.
So this is not my area of expertise. I'll just put it out there that way. So next we had a tie between shrubs and flower gardens. So lots of people are managing flower gardens and shrubs. That was 41%, just a little under half. And then in fourth place were outdoor potted plants at 39%, lawns at 38%. So a lot of big gardening projects under your care based on the survey results. Some of you are actually doing a lot of work. So we also asked everybody which lawn and garden chores you find difficult, challenging, tedious, unpleasant, etc., and why. And weeding, as you can imagine, ran away with first place among the responses to the question, followed distantly by pruning and trimming chores and removing debris. A few people mentioned dealing with the heat, humidity, and insects. This is what keeps me out of the yard the whole summer, is the idea that I have to be out there getting mosquito bit and sweating like mad in the heat and getting burnt from the sun. Like there's nothing about that appeals to me, and I just don't do it. So Paula shared, I'm not a plant person, so I was thrilled that I combined both segments of the show by downsizing myself out of yard work. Which I love so much. And that actually is one of the things that happens a lot of times when people downsize. They start you lose the backyard, or you lose the front yard, or you only get a little tiny strip of yard instead of a great big one. And so a lot of times you end up downsizing yourself out of having to be out there and do the yard work. And so for people that find gardening thrilling, then you have to either create some container gardening stuff, or you have to go and join a gardening community where they're doing community, vegetable growing or flower growing or something. I used to know somebody that was a master gardener, and he ran a very large community garden and coordinated the volunteers and went out there. So he went and to this other location and worked in a garden to sort of keep his hand in it and to keep his, because that was fun for him. He enjoyed it a lot. And so that was how he kept it fresh for him, even though they were living somewhere that didn't really have required a big yard work for him to do. So even if you have to downsize yourself out of it, if that doesn't make you happy, you can find another way to play in somebody's garden. There's always another garden somewhere that you can deal with. We also asked our audience, what's your favorite thing to grow and why? And we got a wonderful variety of responses about that, and as many different answers as there were people answering. But the motif that came up the most frequently was flowers and flowering plants, especially roses. So maybe you guys can send us some pictures of your pretty flowers next time. It's got to be coming close to time for some of those things to start growing again, right? I guess we're not quite there.
The roses are not sprouting yet in Tennessee, but
Yep.
we've got
Still too cold.
daffodils everywhere you look.
There you go. Well, so
loads of
we're
daffodils.
rolling into the flower season, so y'all can start sending us flower pictures next. So aside from all those wonderful responses about what you did, I just wanted to talk a little bit about, prepping for the idea of the season is coming, spring is coming, and it's going to be time when you start getting active again outside. And so let's talk about how to begin that process. So just like you do for the inside of the house, you want to start with an assessment. So surveying your grounds outside and any of the storage spaces that are dedicated to lawn and garden materials and equipment. And you want to be looking for anything that needs attention and start a list of priorities. And I think about some people actually have storage buildings outside that have things in them just exclusively for the yard. Some people dedicate a portion of their garage to store that kind of equipment. And then some people have to have a little bit of that stuff in the house. So if you're the person with the 80 houseplants, I'm guessing that most of the stuff that you use is actually in the house somewhere. And so going to wherever that dedicated storage space is and, thinking of it as a storage room that needs to be cleared out, pulling everything out, sorting through it. You've been going in and out of it. You were in and out of it all last season. Now's the time to fluff it and refresh it and see what it's like. So go do an assessment, see how bad it is. See what you got to start doing and make a list of the things that you think are the priorities for you. It's a perfect time to remove trash that's found your way into those storage units, into your outdoor spaces. If you have most often I see a collection of empty pots and all of the little plastic pot cups that came with the last planting, and the cups sort of got tossed over in the corner somewhere and left as a pile. I see that, and I see lots of tool collections that are sort of thrown in a heap. And so if you're somebody that's actively using the tools, it's probably a good time to pull them out, clean them, make sure that they're in good shape, and make sure they're all tools that you would still use. And some of those things are things that require sharpening, for instance. Like if you're using a pruner of some kind, you don't want it to be difficult to cut. So it's a perfect time to take those tools out and go to the garden store while there's nothing going on and let them sharpen up all your tools. You want to go through the pots and throw out what didn't survive last season. Sometimes the pots give up the ghost. They crack. The freezing and icing and water and all of that makes those things crack and collapse over time. And so you want to check those pots and see, did they survive? Do they have cracks? Is it going to come undone? Did a hole develop? In Houston, they don't die from the cold, they die from the heat. So anything that is lightweight and plastic, which makes it easy for me to lift the pot instead of being heavy ceramic, if it's a plastic pot, it's easier for me to lift, but then it's also affected by the heat all summer long. And so that plastic gets super brittle and it eventually cracks and falls apart. So I often have to throw away things that have not survived the last summer season, or they've just become too crunchy. And you don't realize they're crunchy until you try to go and pick them up, and then you go to lift them and they just crumble and they crack away in your hand. So this is a perfect time to inspect those pots and see what in the cold weathers places, what didn't survive the icing season, and in the summer, what didn't survive the heat season, and get rid of those. Throw out the empties that can be recycled. And if you're the person that goes and puts in like new seasonal color, or you install a bunch of bedding plants and you trade them out, you end up with trays and trays of those recyclable containers that they came in. And somehow people think I should save them because I'm going to need them, except that you never do really very much, because you're always, the next time you have pots, they all come in a new set of pots. So that's one thing that I find thrown in with all of the more permanent pots is all the recyclable ones. And so this is a perfect time to go scoop all those up and send them off to recycling and make room for the next round you're about to have coming in. Don't go crazy buying stuff. This is the new stuff for spring is coming. And, just like any other collection that we have, we think that we need to go nuts buying stuff. And I think you want to hold off.
It's also really easy to accumulate a supply of the shallow plastic or cardboard trays that they place your bedding plants in.
Yes,
Leela said, I'm friends with the local gardening center owner and give all the little pots back to her.
Oh, there you go.
I also share houseplant and yard clippings and plants with her to get free packs of tomatoes each spring.
Oh, there you go.
Nice
That's
trade-off.
lovely. That's a nice trade-off. And I'm not sure, for a local store like a Home Depot, for instance, those plants aren't being potted in your local store. They're being potted away somewhere else. And so it has to be someplace that would actually be in the process of
where
creating
the work is happening on site.
Yeah. I'm glad you have some place to do it though, this local. That's awesome, because not everybody's going to have that. Okay. What I was saying about crazy buying stuff is make sure that you go through everything and find out what's usable and what needs trashing and replacing before you go shopping. So you want to have a better idea in mind of what you actually have at home that will work, or that you find acceptable, and what needs to be filled in. This is a perfect time to check your chemicals and dispose of stuff that you won't use. Like any other chemical in the house, you're going to buy things and try them and then not like them, and don't think the results are good enough, don't like the way that it happens, whatever reason makes you not like it. So, or it's something that has gotten so little use that it's really, really old. And at some point, those yard chemicals are serious chemicals. And, I just don't trust them being in good shape and doing what they were intended to do for really long periods of time. So if you have some weed killer that's 25 years old, you probably should let that go and buy something that's fresh again. I just wouldn't trust that it's still doing what it was supposed to do so many years later. So perfect time to go through, and it's a weird chore. It's a weird errand that you have to run. You have to go find the appropriate disposal place to go take those things. And so while you can't be out planting, you might as well be filtering those chemicals and then making the errand run to go dispose of the ones that you don't want anymore, so that you'll have the chemicals that you want when you're ready to start doing the planning part, the fun part. And then you want to look at delegating chores. So there's going to be chores that you find too difficult, that are super boring or tedious, or they're unpleasant to you. And maybe you want to delegate them to somebody else in the household that loathes them less than you, or maybe they really like it. So if you have one of those people in your house, that's super awesome, and figure out how you can divvy up the chores amongst you. But if you don't, then I think it's time to look at paying somebody to come and do some of that tedious work for you, so that you're not doing it, you're not getting done what you want done, and you're not overexerting yourself. I think it's the biggest thing is that when you get to spring and it's clear out time and you have to clear out old stuff, or there's a storm that comes through and suddenly there's a bunch of cleaning up that needs to be done. It's a bigger volume than maybe some of us can manage at our age. And so it's a good idea to pay somebody to come and do work that it's not something you should stay focused on. You'd rather plant the flowering plants, put the seeds in, grow your spinach and your green beans, and let somebody else come in and haul off the tree debris from the storm that came through. So just consider that that's chore delegation is something you can add into your process of the gardening.
Pat shared, last fall, for the first time after being in my house for 10 years, I had a friend who helped simplify my landscaping in front of my house. We plan to get together every few weeks for lunch to maintain it.
That's lovely. How great. And, and if you think about that, there's somebody that moved and doesn't have as much gardening to do and they want more gardening, you can volunteer your house. That's a great idea. That's awesome. And how fun to make it a community event between the two of you. That's wonderful.
And a different Pat commented, I think Lowe's will recycle the black plastic pots that plants come in.
Okay. That's cool.
That's something to keep in mind.
Right. If you have to, when you're ready to take your spring trip to go buy some new stuff, you can go take the empties with you and see if they want them. Okay. Does anybody else have anything to add for gardening?
A couple more comments. I wanted to share one from Ginger. Ginger said, my mother lived with us for 15 years before her passing in December. Mm-hmm. My husband built a 14 by 14 covered deck off my mother's second floor bedroom. She called it her garden in the sky.
Oh.
She had a green thumb and filled her deck with lots of plants. It was relatively easy to maintain. I'm planning to keep it up.
Isn't that lovely? And I'm sure that she appreciated the ability to go out there and, garden in her way on the patio. That's awesome.
And it's a wonderful tribute to commit to keep it up. And yeah. I think, Ginger will be able to sort of commune with her.
Right.
Her mom.
Enjoy the beauty she created out there. That's awesome.
Teresa said, I find it a hassle to find the disposal place for all of the chemicals. Any ideas? The best thing to do is, search online for the name of your city or town and hazardous waste disposal.
Yes.
What do they call the place in West Park?
It's Environmental Service Center in Houston.
Yeah, in Houston, it's the Environmental Service Center. So Environmental Service Center might be a search term you could use.
Yeah, but
I don't know if that would be common.
But that's what comes up when you search hazardous waste in Houston. So yeah, the hazardous waste is the term you're looking for related to your city. And so Google on that term, and you should see who's doing it. Whether it's a private company that does it for pay, or whether it's a city service.
Pat mentioned our county landfill has a hazardous waste center with limited hours. So check your city or county dump and find out whether they have either a specific facility where you can drop off hazardous stuff, or whether there might be a limited time window. They might only third Saturday of the month or something collect that stuff.
Yeah, because they disposed of it differently. They have to do something outside of the norm. It's a different process to take those things away. So, like the Houston hours are limited. There's 2 service centers in Houston, but they have 2 days a week for 3 or 4 hours and a Saturday for 3 or 4 hours, and that's all that is available. So, you will have to coordinate your drop off to their hours, but worth the effort to try to figure it out.
Yeah, Amanda mentions that her county has hazmat drop-off events a couple of times a year.
Well, there you go.
And so she says she has a whole pallet of hazmat in her garage waiting for the next one.
Right. And be careful when you load it in the car. Let me just say that.
Yeah.
Load it in containers and don't use cardboard. Use plastic so that if it spills, it doesn't destroy your car.
And maybe put a tarp down there in the cargo space first.
One time I was working in an artist studio, and he was an older guy, and he had he was a painter, and he had a huge amount of weird chemicals in there, and a whole bunch of them that needed to go away. And so I loaded up at the time, my Volkswagen Jetta sports wagon with all of these chemicals. And then I got in the car and closed the door and almost gassed myself out. It was so strong. I had to drive with all the windows down. And it was, as I recall, it was like 1,000 degrees outside, but it was like I couldn't drive the car and breathe because it was those chemicals had been outside for so long, but they were contained in my car. It was just too much.
Oof,
and so I had to drive and go. And luckily I was able to go and drop them off right away, which was a miracle because that hardly ever happens. And I don't know what I would have done. I was driving along going, oh God, I hope a cop doesn't stop me. I hope no one throws a match my way. Like I'm going to be in big trouble. And it was a job that clearly I had not gauged it correctly. And I got out of it by the skin of my teeth. So yeah, be careful when you're in the car. If you have a bunch of chemicals, make sure that you have good ventilation while you're driving. I'm just saying.
Or
you'll know right away if you don't.
Maybe enlist a friend who has a vehicle with an open bed.
Right, like a pickup truck.
Yeah.
Exactly. So you don't have to be in the car with it.
Okay, we'd better move on.
Oh, okay.
Moving to a smaller living space is a complex process that requires careful planning and tough decisions. Today, we're going to help you get a solid start by discussing the emotional and logistical challenges of downsizing.
So we asked our audience, when do you expect to downsize your living arrangements? And 21% said they plan to age in place to live in their current space for the rest of their lives if possible. 35% expect to downsize at some point in the next 2 to 10 years. And then 6% said that they've already downsized and they don't anticipate having to do it again. And then 8% said that they don't expect to have to downsize on their next move. And I want to say, I think for the 21% that hope that they can age in place, I think you probably can age in place. And if there's 2 of you, it's likely that you can age in place until there's just 1 of you. And then you may actually have to move after that. Your family may not be comfortable with you living alone later. So just keep in mind that there's a possibility at the end for a surviving spouse.
Right. Well, and then there's also just, what life deals you. And so we said, if possible on that answer,
exactly,
but some people may not find it possible.
Exactly. It may not work out. So we also asked our viewers and listeners, what emotions do you experience when you think about downsizing? And the common themes that came up in the answers were worry, panic, sadness, self-pity, and grief. But a lot of the respondents replied with words like relief, joy, excitement, anticipation, and gratitude. And often the same people expressed one or more the negative emotions and also one or more of the positive emotions. So here's a couple of the typical responses. Susan Marie said, sad, overwhelmed, frustrated that I haven't gotten rid of more stuff all along. And Sandra said, fear because I'm afraid I might give away something that I will miss or need later. Excitement because I know I'm making our home more the way that we want it. And relief because there's so much less to clean, dust, store, move, and keep track of. Pride because it's actually getting done. So Sandra was really showing the range of emotions that happen as you do this work. There's sad and scary things that happen, and there's happy and gratitude things that happen. It's really amazing. Several people talked about being relieved of the burdens that are related to a larger house. That was a common theme that I thought was interesting. The idea that they felt like they were lifting a burden by doing the work. And that was an emotion I hadn't really contemplated before. So we're going to talk about my advice for downsizing today from a perspective of logistics and emotional demands. And so I want to help you wrap your mind around the process and the energy and the time required to make this happen. The most important thing to understand about downsizing is the logistics that are required for the job. The biggest support that I offer to my clients around this is to help them realize just how much work's involved in sorting all your belongings and either donating them or packing them up. It's very tiring and physical work that is way beyond most of our usual daily physical activity. but it's also mentally taxing since it's a process of continuous decision-making and facing emotional moments. That makes the job so much harder than just the work of packing up to move. In order to plan to downsize, you have to start with assessing how much you can do yourself and what you need to recruit help to do. If you have any physical incapacities, like you can't stand for very long, or you can't lift any weight, or you can't bend over or walk for more than a few minutes, then you need help and lots of it. If you absolutely can't get help, then you need time to make up for it because you're going to be doing the work at a much slower pace. So the work will have to start years before your expected move. Last year, I had a client that was on oxygen. She was attached to an oxygen tank. And she wanted to sell her townhouse and move to live near her family. So she hired me, and she told me at our first meeting that she expected us to get done in 6 weeks. And I was like, oh, that's not happening. I immediately told her that wasn't realistic at all. And we ultimately spent the whole year going through her things, one appointment at a time. And she worked on it when I wasn't there also. So what she thought would take 6 weeks actually took 12 months to complete. She did move out to near her family and has her townhouse on the market. And so she completed her work, but her work alone, when she was doing it without me, was much slower due to her reduced capacity for physical activity. And she needed me to haul out all the donations and trash and recycling over the year that we worked. So her story is a perfect example of how confused we get about how long it's going to take to do the work. If you wait until a few weeks or months before your move deadline, you will end up overexerting yourself and getting hurt. One client ended up cracking a vertebrae from all the extra physical work she was doing in the shortened time frame. She was trying to make it happen. She was trying to meet the deadline. She was pushing herself really, really hard. And the end result was she actually injured herself. So it's important to adjust your expectations of the timeline based on your physical condition. Don't overestimate how much you can work. You don't want to wait until a few months before the move to get started at all. And you don't want to wait until you're physically challenged to get started. So right now, while you have capacity, you should be working on it, working towards it, so that if you get to a place where you now are physically challenged, or you have an injury or an illness, then you will have already done some of the physical work and it'll be okay. Consider how dense your home is and how many places need going through. It's always a surprise to people when they open cabinets or they start going through closets and taking things down, or they go into spaces that they haven't looked in 10 years, or rooms they haven't been in for 15 years, and they start pulling stuff out, and you've sort of just discounted the presence of all that stuff. You just don't think about it being there, but you actually have to go and touch all that stuff and go through it all. And it takes a huge amount of time. So walking around with fresh eyes and opening things that you haven't looked at for a long time, going in closets and rooms that you haven't touched for a while, and recognizing how dense it is and how much work it is, how much time you're going to need, is an important calibration to make as you start planning this move. So now let's talk a little bit about the emotions around the process of downsizing. Many of you shared your feeling that downsizing represented giving up some plans or possibilities for your life. Moving to a smaller place meant you had to give up on some dreams for what you would do or accomplish or live like. Some people talked about, the house that they envisioned never actually came to pass. The setup of the arrangement of the space never actually came to pass. And so they felt like they were giving up some dreams. There were items that required sacrificing for space or time or ability that meant you were closing a door on some possibilities for your life. And that it was emotionally distressing process. I understand feeling sad about the loss of some plan you had for your life. Giving up the things might mean giving up the plan, or it might mean that the plan gets modified to accommodate your circumstances. You may not end up doing it the way that you always envisioned, but you might be given the opportunity to redesign the plan to better suit who you are now. My point here about the emotions of loss and the surrender of dreams is that you can feel those feelings, but then add the thought that this loss is making a space for new possibilities you haven't thought of yet, or haven't been shown to you yet. So there may be something so much cooler and rewarding that's just out of sight, waiting for you to clear the space for it to arrive. I've had that experience so many times and been so surprised what actually showed up. And my business is that story. I had no idea I would be an organizer. And until the idea appeared for me, I didn't even know it was a thing to aspire to. It was never a goal that I was like, I want someday I'm going to do this, and become an organizer. It wasn't even on my radar. Now I can't imagine my life doing anything else. I was so tired and sick of being an accountant and had no hope that my work life would ever be rewarding. And now it's more rewarding than I could ever believe possible. So I know you're giving up possibilities as you prepare to downsize, but I just want to interject that you can also imagine that you're making space for something even better to appear when there's some space for it to show up. And you don't have any idea what's coming. You don't have any idea what's available, and it could be something spectacular. So you can mourn the loss of what you're surrendering. And you can also imagine that you are clearing the decks for something new and fabulous to show up instead. And we're going to wish that for you. And in the meantime, get to clearing the space. That's the goal of downsizing, is clear the decks and clear the energy out and clear out some room for something new and unimagined and something you're unprepared for to show up. Okay.
Susan said, my last and hopefully final move was an upsize.
Oh.
The idea being I would have room for a live-in carer should I ever need one.
Oh, that's smart. Planning for the future.
I don't trust the sheltered living offerings in the UK. They're very expensive for what they are. Joyce said 6 weeks. It took 6 months for my dad, and that was with everyone involved.
Exactly, right? Like, it is a massive job. And my poster children for downsizing were a couple that they bought into a building that was being built. So they were moving into an assisted living place, and they were going to get a 2-bedroom apartment in this assisted living. And so they had the building timeline to prepare. And so we spent 15 months every 3 weeks going through their house 3 hours at a time. And that got us all the way around the house. And they had to pay somebody separately to empty the garage. And so we spent a huge amount of time getting them ready. But because we did it, and because we put that lead time in up front, when the movers came to pack, they were packing, 25% of what had been there before. And unpacking was a breeze because it was down to exactly what they wanted and nothing else. And it made getting into the apartment 1,000 times easier.
Linda, she of the sewing machine. Go ahead, Linda.
In the past, one time, Gayle, when talking about downsizing or moving, I can't remember, you mentioned getting a floor plan of the new place.
Yes.
And comparing it. And I wanted to tell you what happened when I did that.
Okay.
I got the floor plan for an apartment. We're downsizing, seniors.
Right.
And I thought, well, I'll start someplace easy. I'll start in the laundry room. Okay. So I went in the laundry room and I looked all around and I thought, well, washer, dryer, water heater, those kinds of things. And then a 6-foot long cabinet, upper and lower, that's in my laundry room. So I said, well, how much cabinets do I have in the new laundry room? And there's no laundry room. There's just the washer and dryer, like in the kitchen, right?
Right.
And very grateful to have them there. But what a reality check that was for me.
Right.
So
that 6 feet of cabinets evaporated in the downsizing, right?
It did. So thank you so much for that suggestion. It has
you're
been
welcome.
Remarkably helpful.
That's so great. And it is one of the places that commonly they lose square footage because they adjust to an apartment size washer and dryer. And then it's like any other little apartment, they sort of make a little cabinet for a stacking washer and dryer, or they have enough where you can open the little louver doors and there's the full size washer and dryer, but nothing else. They don't give up any floor space or square footage to make it into a room. And so Good for you. That was actually a really good one because it's a common one where you lose space. And so I'm glad you thought to look at that one. That was smart.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Thank you.
A couple more comments. Paula in New Mexico said, I downsized pretty drastically last year and let go of most of my stuff. Every
Ooh.
once in a while, I wish I still had the portable DVD player, but that's it. Don't miss anything else.
Isn't that great? And you know what? If that one DVD player out of the 2,000 things you gave up is the only thing you worry about, then you can go buy another portable DVD player and be over it, right? Like that's totally worth the investment. If you want to have that portable machine back, go buy a new one and call it a day. And in the meantime, you're keeping one out of 2,000 things you gave up. Good for you.
Naomi said, I really don't want to face the need to downsize with a health-imposed deadline. I would far rather think that the last most mature stage of my life is the period of lightening the load of stuff and focusing on less tangible aspects of life.
I think that's a really great point of view to have. It's a very positive one. And it's also recognizing that you want to be doing it on your own time, at your own speed, under your own steam. And as we get to having a health challenge, as we get to, we don't have the physical capacity anymore. It's too much work for us. As those capacities diminish, then it just makes the process harder and harder. And some people sort of give up and go, okay, I can't fix it. And then the kids have to come and do it. And I do get calls a lot for people that, okay, my mother's moving 6 weeks from now. And yes, she lives in 3,000 square feet and no, we haven't done anything. It's like, oh yeah, no, we're in trouble. And in order to solve that problem, I recommend that they subtract what they want for the new apartment and leave everything else behind. And then, you have an estate sale, you deal with that part of the process, after the move, because you've lost your window to do the filtering up front. And so you have to just pluck out the things that you're going to move to the new place and move them. And that's a very, awkward and difficult position. It's hard to tell movers how to pack in that situation. You have to stand over them and tell them, pack that, don't pack that through the whole house. Super difficult to coordinate moving and packing by the movers that way.
And if the house is sold, this may be one of those situations where you have no choice but to go to a storage unit.
Yeah. Because there's no cramming it in. Like if you have a deadline and you're moving and you don't have enough time to get it done, you certainly can't take 3,000 square foot house and put it into a 2-bedroom assisted living apartment that is a fifth of the size of what you've been living in. You can't wedge it in there. Another thing that people forget about is you're most certainly going to give up the garage. So all that stuff that's been hiding in the garage all this time, it ain't coming with you because there's no place for that to go in a downsized situation, hardly ever. So you should look at your garage as that bomb that's going to go off, because almost 100% of that has to be gone. It's going to have to go away. You may have some Christmas decorations and kind of things like that out there, and you're not going to be able to take all of them, and everything else that's out there, there's not going to be an equivalent space to put those things. So that garage is going to be full of discarded possibilities, giving up activities, giving up processes. In almost 100% of that stuff is going to end up going. You're going to be able to take a little thin slice of things and incorporate them into the house, the new space where you live. And in the meantime, you're going to have to shed. So keep that one in mind. That's a big one that people lose. You lose the extra bedrooms, you lose the washroom, like she talked about, the washing machine, laundry space. You lose pantry a lot. For some reason, that's one of the rooms that they sacrifice, a pantry. So, yeah.
Well, you're moving to a smaller kitchen as well. And so the pantry is one of the things they sacrifice to get.
And they're providing a meal service, right? Like there's a cafeteria where they're providing meals. So they're expecting you to not do the same level of cooking. And so that is a big adjustment. that people have to make. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, somebody else is going to cook for me every day. I'm going to make my own breakfast. I'm not going to have to be, madly cooking. So it is a shift for sure.
Okay. I'm going to let Leela give us a final thought before we
Okay.
get to our closing announcements. Leela says, the less stuff I have to maintain, the more time I have for relationships and adventures in the outdoors, like hiking at a state park this week with my parents who are in their 80s.
Oh my goodness.
Use it or lose it. Less stuff keeps me more active.
There you go. Good job. And I love that perspective. That's really wonderful. Thanks for sharing, Leela. Appreciate it.
Okay, we're going to be back next week at the usual time, and we're going to have some more tips for organizing on a budget.
Okay.
We've had a lot of issues with inflation and price
Worry about cash
gouging
flow
and all that sort of thing. So we're going to refresh our suggestions for you on how to do your organizing chores with little or no money. I guess I should have said next week, that is Tuesday, February 28th at the usual time, noon US Central Time. And I'll have a snappy title and description for you in the email you'll get tomorrow.
Later.
Right. Didn't quite get to it today. Why don't you give us a tittle?
Okay, the title of the tittle this week is With Gratitude. So this week's assignment is to set an item free and express your gratitude for the role or the meaning that it once held for you. So identify something that belonged either to a phase of your life that's over or to a dream or aspiration that you no longer hold. And this is from our example earlier. She gave up the sewing machine and decided that having that sewing machine wasn't necessary anymore. So we want you to find something in your life that is about a phase that you're not going to do anymore, or a dream or aspiration that has missed its mark. Its time has passed. Reflect on the purpose or the meaning that the item once held for you. So think about why that was important for you for so long. And then do any activity that will allow you to express your feelings about the object. So you can write about whatever you feel towards the item, your gratitude, regret, your fondness, your resentment. You can take a photo of the object if you'd like to be able to keep a memory of it fresh. You can create a drawing or a painting or a scrapbook page, whatever kind of artistic thing you want to do to express your emotions around the item, and then set the item free with gratitude by donation, gift, or disposal. The idea is that we all have some things in our life that represent we had an idea, we thought we would do this, and it failed, or it didn't come to pass, or the circumstances never allowed it to come to fruition. And for whatever reason, that dream, that moment, that thought has passed. And so
maybe
honoring
we
it.
imagined we were going to be a world-class downhill skier.
Right. Maybe we thought we were going to learn to love gardening, and I have long since surrendered that goal. Like, that is not happening. So there are things that we have to surrender, and this is part of the process of downsizing for sure. And so just recognizing that there's going to be a few things that make you go, oh, I wish, I'm sorry, I'm sad. And give yourself some room to talk about it and be grateful for the idea or its place in your life, and send it on, and make space for whatever new fabulous things coming. Okay, and we will look forward to hearing your results next week.
If you're watching this on YouTube, we would love for you to join us live. To get notifications about upcoming events, we invite you to join the meetup group by visiting cfhou.com/meetup. You can also follow us on Facebook by visiting cfhou.com/Facebook, or subscribe to our mailing list by visiting cfhou.com/subscribe. We love to hear from you, so please keep your questions, comments, and topic suggestions coming on YouTube, Facebook, or anywhere else that you find us. You can always reach us through our website at clutterfairyhouston.com.
Don't forget that the survey results are now going to be published on the website. So if you go to the website and noodle around, you can find them, and we will continue to post the direct link to any week's survey results in the videos that show up when we post them on YouTube. And so you will be able to find them, we promise. And they're fascinating reading. So please go and check them out. and admire Ed's lovely handiwork that he worked so hard to make happen.
Thank you.
We appreciate you joining us every week. We're so glad you're here, and we will look forward to seeing you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.